So there's this other point I wanted to touch upon with lying and this essence of truth. And I put this forward to you, and I put examples of Ram and Krishna over there. And what I talked about was that just understanding your perspective on truth, that is. Would you fall into the camp of Ram, who would say that you have to say the truth? Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misquoting what they actually stand for, but would you, or let's just play with this, that would you always say the truth no matter the consequence, because it's the truth and it's supposed to be good, and eventually, even if there may be some faults that may happen from it, on a larger extent, society will still be better off? Or would you fall under, let's say, the camp of Krishna, who would bend the rules sometimes and may lie, white lies or whatever, so that the greater good is preserved? Like, do you see how we can work this out?
So let me tell you a small story here. Before I answer your question, let me tell you a small story. There was a sage who had taken a vow that come what may, he's going to tell the truth. Every time, no matter what happens, he's going to tell the truth. If that means that he would have to undergo, some personal issue, personal problem, he's still going to stick to the path of truth. So one day while he was doing his penance, some people ran inside his hermitage. He was sitting outside, ran inside the hermitage. And thereafter, some more people came with swords in their hand, brandishing the swords and asking him, did you see this set of people? And he had taken a vow of truth, so he had seen. So he says, yes, they have gone there. These people who followed them with the swords, they walked in, they killed those guys, looted them because they had some jewelry, and they walked back. Now, this man who's lived a sage all his life, after his death, he was awarded hell, right? And, because he was considered responsible for getting those people killed. Now, remember, all his life, he has said the truth. It's this time also he spoke his truth. So you would think that truth is a great virtue. But no, he was sent to hell because he was responsible for getting these people killed. But he told the truth, right? Now, look at another example here. That, Dronacharya in Mahabharata, okay, he's going berserk and he's unstoppable. And the only way, and there was no way one could eliminate him. So somebody decided to utter a lie, okay? And when he heard that his son was dead, which was a lie, he gave up his arms and they killed him. Now, the second one was a lie, but nobody got penalized for that, okay? And the first one was a truth, and that sage got hell. Now, how do you decide what is truth once again? Now, in the Western culture, we believe there is black and there is white, right? It's a yes or a no. It's a binary. It's a 0 or a 1. But if you see Indian mythology, it's not binary. It's not a yes or a no. It's not the truth is this or everything else. No, it doesn't work that way. Between the black and the gray, I think there were 1,000 shades of gray. Black and white. I mean, between black and white, there are 1,000 shades of gray. So what is truth? And then we define what is untruth. And then we say what is a lie. Now, if you look at both these cases, right? One was a truth which uttered, but it didn't help him. And the other was a lie, but it saved. At the end of the day, what one has to see is what is the lie, if at all, being uttered for what? For what purpose? Is there a larger goal to it, right? Is there a larger goal to it? Because if you just decide, I'm never going to tell tell lies, it's not going to work. Or I'm always going to speak the truth. It doesn't work, right? Sometimes you have to. Now, this is really not a very, very big dilemma when you study mythology and how they look at the definition of truth. So, as I said, simply said, one has to simply look at the larger cause here. And, real life is a lot different from a life in books, right? Today, I can sit and value judge by saying, oh, well, what happened in Mahabharata with Dronacharya was incorrect, right? Because I am seeing it in 2 dimensions. But if you were there at that point of time and they say all's fair in love and war, so all's fair in the war, right? So, of course, there were rules, but then the rules were, so one rationalization is, of course, there were rules, but then everybody was breaking rules. right? So if everybody is breaking rules, should my breaking be all right? That's a question. Or if for the larger good, a lie has been told, is it okay? That's a question that the given culture, the given times will have to answer. And these stories, the way we look at it, frankly, these stories help us understand. See, these stories are all told to you in a metaphor.
Yeah.
They're not telling, it's like, I'm not telling you directions that if you want to go there, go straight, turn right, turn left, and you will find your direction. No, that's giving directions, right? But here we are talking about a metaphor, and these stories are to be seen in metaphor. These stories are to be seen from the perspective of who wrote it. What is the author trying to say? What is the author trying to tell you through this? Remember the fact that all myths, be it epic, stories, myths, were told in a milieu, were told with a purpose, were told in a context, were told for a set audience. The fact that we are still talking about them shows the beauty of the stories, that they've still lived.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
beyond their times. When Valmiki wrote Ramayana, he didn't write for the 21st century people to debate and dissect and do lot more things. No, he just wrote it. He just wrote a novel, an epic which he wanted to write, the perspective of his, of what a man ought to be, or how a man he envisioned. That's what his story is all about, right? So it's lived beyond its time. That's the sheer beauty of it. But you can't take everything in a literal sense. So the definition, and truth is one thing that we see in mythology numerous times. You'll find gods lying, you'll find gods not telling the truth, you'll find gods interpreting the same truth in a different way. Why? Because we as human beings have been so preoccupied by what is true and what is not true that this aspect keeps on coming. Look at any stories across the world. Forget about I'm not just giving examples of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Look at Greek myths. The concept of not telling truth is so common. Look at Egyptian myths. You'll find all the myths have this basic aspect of, should I tell this or should I just keep quiet and not tell you? So one is uttered truth, lies, one is unuttered. I don't say anything and I keep quiet, right? So there are different ways of looking at it. So what Ram does at a certain point of time and what Krishna does in a very different yug for a different audience, for a different time, is going to be very, very different. And remember, we are the same people consuming both of it, right?
Yeah.
At certain point of time, I am saying that you should be steadfast, you should never utter a lie like Ram does. And at the same time, I am in a different mindset. I'm justifying everything that Krishna has done and I'm accepting him as a character, right? That's the duality, or call it the plurality, of how our myths are to us. And we are accepting it. And that's why I said the definition of truth is going to be very, very different on how you answer this question. So right. Am I in that camp or am I in this camp? It all depends on the circumstances. I have a huge range of shades. I can dangle from there to here with ease. That's what I would say. That's how I look at it.
That's beautifully put, Utkarsh. So just to play devil's advocate, I would say is that, for example, it's very hard to, let's say, for a character to be as noble as Krishna, if I have to put it that way, almost godlike in that sense. And obviously he is a god. So that's why probably this idea is propagated, and not only in Indian myths, but worldwide myths, that you have to constitute always trying to say the truth, because in most terms that will be correct. And it becomes very hard. Like the essence I'm coming here is that if you do say a lie once, like what are the implications of that? Would that mean that I would keep saying lies because I've gotten away with it? Like, how does one justify that? Okay, because that was for a noble cause. And how can we even say if something is for a noble cause? Like how do we define a noble cause?
Okay, now that's a good question. How do you define a noble cause? I never thought of it that way, but let me put it this way. A noble cause is when it is not for my individual personal gain, right? If I am trying to kill somebody just because I want his property, then that's not a noble cause. But if I'm killing somebody, okay, because he's been affecting or he's been terrorizing my entire community, that might be a noble cause, right? And in our epics, you have a lot of these kind of examples, wherein you'll find the negative character going in for personal gains, and the positive character is actually fighting for a community. Take the case of Ravan, right? Ravan kidnapped somebody's wife, right? For what? For his sister having been insulted. Now, and then later on, of course, the story weaves that so killing Ram at that point of time, or defeating Ram, was more personal gain, because it was, what was at stake? His ego, his arrogance, his hubris, was at stake. Now, if you look at the other side, okay, what were they fighting for? They were fighting to rightfully get their wife, his wife back. They were fighting an unjust regime, right? So that's a good cause. Take the case of Pandavas and Kauravas once again. What is a noble cause? They were fighting. They were on the side of the right. They were on the side of a truth that they rightfully are the heirs to that to the property. But now somebody says, sorry, I'm not going to give it to you because I just don't want to give it to you. Now that's a personal wrong, but a noble cause is that they were all on the side of the wrong, right? Everybody was perpetuating everything that was wrong out there, right? You had completely by deception thrown these guys out. You had by deception, after they had served their exile, you are now not willing to give it. So the war was necessary. Now, to eliminate an unjust regime, any steps that need to be taken can be taken. I'm not justifying anything at this point. I'm only trying to define what is a noble cause. A noble cause is something that is good for a larger segment of people than just me, right? So if I'm trying to eliminate somebody just because I need his property, that's wrong. But if I'm fighting for what is my right, I have been unjustly deprived of something that is mine, then that is a noble cause. But if I'm just trying to usurp your property just because I just want it, so noble cause has a definition of that sort. So is it right to make a few errors? This thing, if when you read Mahabharata and if you see the whole story in context, not just take one episode of Dronacharya's killing or one episode of, let's say, Karna's killing. We all talk about when Karna gets killed, that's not fair. He had laid his arms down. That's so unfair. But nobody's mentioning the fact that a few days back in the same war, a young Abhimanyu was killed by 5 or 6 of stalwarts. They were stalwarts. This fellow was a 16-year-old kid, and they were all stalwarts, and they broke all rules, not only of war, but of humanity. That 6 people surrounded this kid and made sure that they killed him one after the other. Nobody's mentioning that. Right. So, when you see it in context, when you see these stories in context, that's why I always say, in mythology and in myths, never, ever take a story out of context. And the stories are so woven so intricately that whenever you touch one and you try to take it, you'll realize that 3 more stories come up to explain that story. So stories in myths, in mythology should always be taken in context. You have to understand the cultural background of it. You have to understand who said it for what purpose. Otherwise, the stories are just, another sort of figment of imagination, and you'll say, oh yeah, that's so unfair. That's what Krishna does every time. I'm not justifying anything on behalf of any. For me, all of them are mythical characters, and I when I read them, I find them all same. But when I look at how people tend to rationalize and justify, I think that never, ever take anything out of context. It's very, very important to read it, understand it in context.